did the wrong screen first. As soon as I hit the button, I was like, God damn it. I don't even know if this, I'm sure the stream saw it. I'm sure they saw it. Welcome everybody to Tome Knowledge. Why? Well, because my buttons, like the countdown's right here, and then this one just says main. And then the Tome Knowledge one's way down here because I ran out of button space. So that's why, because it's just far away. Because I don't know, my fingers are lazy. Castles and Castles, thank you for the follow.
What a great name.
Wow,
Casters and Cantrips, a castle's a castle. Wait, what? Yes, casters and cantrips and castles. Boom.
There you go. C and C and C. Hope everyone's having a fantastic day. Go ahead.
Sorry, it's just hot. It's really hot.
It is. It's almost 100 for me. Anyway.
It's actually been a little cooler here, which has been great, but it's supposed to go back up over 90 soon. So
yeah.
Sorry. Well, we'll start. Welcome on, everyone.
Yeah, go for it.
It's a slow start day. Hi. What's going on, everybody? Tome of Knowledge. Almost said the thing you were gonna say right before we went live. Where we talk about cool D&D stuff and learn. Maybe you can learn a thing or two. So what's Casters and Castles? Nicole, Bun, Shelbs. What's going on, everybody? Chinner, Zeus. Good to see everybody. Today we're gonna talk about a character backstory and the process of going through that.
Yes. One thing I like to do a lot, but people like it to varying degrees when creating characters. So we're going to discuss what we do, and you can discuss with us what you like to do when it comes to creating your character's backstory. So,
but before we jump into it, I would like everyone here to please go look at our YouTube channel and go subscribe and watch some videos, because what'd you say, Boobs? Less than 270-ish hours?
217 away from us being able to apply for partnership. So thank you, everybody, for watching our content, checking out the playlist, and keep on doing it. We're almost there.
Yeah.
And it's all thanks to you guys.
As far as the content you'll find on our YouTube channel, we've got Tome Knowledge is there, obviously. We have our art streams are there. We have on Thursdays, exclusive to YouTube and podcast format only, is our Out of Combat, which is our little after show that we do for our D&D sessions every week. So you can kind of go behind the curtain and have the players, we'll talk about like what they thought during the campaign and kind of what was going through their mind. And then, of course, our Friday episodes, where we'll edit them down for your viewing pleasure, so you don't have to sit through countdowns and all that stuff. And as well as some shorts, some art stuff as well as they come by. I just realized I forgot to post that short today because I didn't see it before I went to bed. Whoops.
Oh, well, it's fine.
We'll get it tomorrow. It'll be fine. It's fine. We're professional stream over here, guys. We're professionals.
Yeah, we are.
And if you're interested, we also have all our stuff on our podcasts, so you can find it on Spotify, Apple, Google, everywhere podcasts are served. But if you want them early, go to our Patreon.
Yeah, thank you for watching and listening. It means a lot to us, and it really helps us.
All right, see you later. No, I'm kidding.
Bye.
Yeah, see ya. So
this podcast is brought to you by us. We're pitching our own content.
Yes. Fantastic. Oh man. Okay, so character backstories. I have these kind of chunked up into two like big sections in my brain. Let me see if it makes sense to y'all. I've got one that's just like general talking points about backstories, like some things that you could do, why they're important, that kind of stuff. And then I have like another block that's like specific, like advice for new players. Does that make sense to y'all? Or we could just kind of freestyle it. I don't care.
Yeah, we can follow that, and then we'll probably end up meandering a bit, but
as we do. What I want to know and this is a question for each of you. I'm going to start with a question. I want to know what goes through both of your minds when you're creating a backstory, and you can relate to how this was for casters and cantrips if you'd like, if you want a frame of reference where people might be able to connect it to.
I guess I'll start. Yeah, so I guess with my process in general is I more often enough think of the class I want to be first and then associate with the race, and then I would start to formulate ideas of what my character's backstory is going to be. Very rarely do I have like a character idea first and then going with like race and class. There's maybe like 2-3 times that I've done that. Like with Ron for campaign 1, I was like, "Oh, furbolgs are super cool. How cool is that if he was a paladin?" And then there was like Oath of the Ancients, which is like fits perfectly with a furbolg paladin. And then so I started reading up on furbolgs cultures and naming conventions and all that stuff. So that's how I came up with Ron and how he doesn't understand idioms and phrases and stuff like that. Just based on reading what how furbolgs are in society.
I for the most part I'm do things similarly. I will think about first and foremost what class I'm going to be playing, because we're doing long extended campaigns, so I want to make sure I nail down first what am I going to enjoy playing for a whole campaign or a majority of a campaign. And then once I kind of get that nailed down, then I start thinking, well, there's a whole bunch of races to choose from. A lot of them do neat stuff. Nailing that down next, and then kind of going into all of the sort of things necessary for coming up with a backstory that I think is interesting and fun. You know, where somebody's from, the culture from that place. Do they have any fun speech patterns? Like, there's a whole plethora of things I'm sure we're going to get into in more detail in a few minutes. But um, that's usually how it goes. Like Moob said, sometimes I'll have an idea for a character or a character with a certain personality, and then I'll match up a class to that, but not too often.
I think for me, in my thought process before we get into the kind of nuts and bolts here, is I'll already have like a character concept in mind of like what I want to play. And then I'll build like some of the background stuff. So not backstory, but background. Make a custom one, look through that, and then kind of figure out based on like personality and like flaws and bonds. I'm like, what could this person be? Like, what could have got them to this point? And probably a big theme that you'll hear later is then I'll work with the DM and figure out like, is this an already established universe? Are we playing in like Forgotten Realms or Faerun? Is this totally made up? If it is, like, can you give me some deets? And I'll usually work back and forth quite a bit with the DM to find something that's cool to me, and then that works with them. Because for me, I tend to like my backstories having story implications. Depending on the kind of campaign that you play, that's not always possible, but if it's like a long sprawling type thing, I like to weave stuff in that have chances to kind of come up during play. Whereas, different campaigns, your backstory may not matter. It may just be like a, little roller coaster ready for you to ride. It's kind of my thought process.
Yeah, all that makes perfect sense. I know I go to you all the time, especially when we're about to start the new campaign, like because we're in our own world, so I need to know some details about what you got planned for the world, and where my character could be from, and what the cities there are like, and all that stuff. So yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I know. When we were going to the gym a lot, while we're in between sets, Max and I would just be like, I'll be talking about my character with Max, like I was like, hey, can we do this? Blah blah blah. And, like, well, my character is this, and then I think at one of our gym sessions, you were like, "Hey, do you want to do some weird stuff?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, let's do some weird stuff."
I feel like one of the conversations we had, I think you had either forgot that we had it or you weren't sure what I was gonna do, and then it kind of just came up in the campaign a couple times already. Campaign 2. You're like, "Oh shit, that's how he's gonna do it."
Yes, we're talking about D&D.
We're talking about D&D. Yeah. Bunch of nerd bros at the
I
gym.
I did remember. It's just like I didn't know when you were gonna throw it at me, so it was every time you did do it, it was always a shock or a surprise because I just never know when it's gonna come into play.
I got a question.
Sure.
When you're coming up with backstories for characters, do you like to pull from existing characters in media as not like copy and paste like a character background story from something else, but do you like to pull bits and pieces from various characters and stories and TV shows and other games and stuff that you've seen and kind of like incorporate little things in there?
I won't pull like wholesale, but I will borrow, and I don't know if it's necessarily directly pulled from medium, but some tropes, some like common tropes in like fantasy setting
Yeah,
type
that's kind of
stuff.
what I mean, right?
Yeah, I'll do that all the time. I mean, because it's easier for me to be like, oh, I like when a story does this. Can my character? Yeah, okay, let's work some of that stuff in. So I had, um, I don't know what to call this trope or a classic trope, but I had a character who was essentially royalty and was basically sent on a quest to like collect something that may or may not have existed, kind of thing, and he was not allowed to come back and take the throne until he found it, kind of thing, which seems like you see that a lot, but it's so generic that you can kind of weave in all kinds of stuff into it.
Oh yeah,
That was my boy Craigbert.
Craigbert.
I think while I'm making the character, I don't consciously try to pull tropes or like build a character off like a TV show or anime that I watch. But maybe subconsciously kind of that stuff kind of rolls into it, like me without thinking about it. Then it comes like, oh, actually it's kind of like this. Um I guess like Azric, for example. Like while I didn't intend to, it's a little bit what's it called? Our flag means death. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
The captain guy, it's just like
Steed Bonnet.
yeah, Stede Bonnet.
Steve.
So there might be a little bit of influence of Stede Bonnet with Azric, but not like he's noble who just wanted to be a pirate and escape his family life. Like maybe kind of like the boilers, like the ship we first try to take out. We
Yep.
try to raid. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that like it's good that you mentioned that even like subconsciously, because like makes you think of like the hero's journey and like things that are already written and there's like already established like plots and things. Like I don't think that I'm gonna be the person that comes up with an entirely new like trope or like a new way to
Right.
tell a story,
Yeah.
but like it's just only natural based on all the media that we consume of just kind of, oh, I think I've heard of that somewhere, or oh, this seems cool. Like how people draw inspiration when they're creating that stuff anyway. So
Yeah. For me, there's a lot of like different character archetypes or personality types that draw my attention a lot, and I enjoy in other media like anime and video games and stuff. Like for instance, Valkan. That's sort of like aloof uh, character. He's sometimes silly or will say dumb stuff, but in actuality, he's like very skilled at what he does, and he's once he makes friends with somebody, he's got your back for life, basically. I mean, I drew a lot of inspiration from one of my favorite anime characters for that. I didn't copy and paste anything exactly, but I wanted to play a character that kind of fell into that sort of archetype because it's fun. It's
yeah.
fun. There's
Yeah.
You're gonna have fun conversations with the other players when your character quirks come out, and it's I think for my first character, I just wanted something that wasn't so like dark and brooding and serious, or you know, that your standard. I just wanted to go on an adventure. He's a dude, and he's out there, and he was just chilling until shit went bad for him, and kind of put him on a path to where he ended up. So
that is a good point that I thought of when you were mentioning that I'm just didn't want to go on adventure, right? It's also important, and this is just like character motivation, but can also tie into backstory, is you've got to come up with a reason of why your character's there, right? It's easy to weave that into your backstory, but it's up to the player to determine, why is my character here? Why do they want to be here? What sort of things in the past may have led them here? And why am I going on this adventure? It's really important, because if your character doesn't want to go on an adventure, then why are you playing him?
Right.
Retire him and start over.
Something has brought them to the point where they're gonna hit the road doing adventure stuff.
Yeah.
What is that thing? What got
why
you
do
there?
you wanna why do you wanna be a hero? Why are you adventuring instead of settling down and just living a life of, I don't know, peasantry? I don't know.
I think that's the key thing, right? For a lot of backstory stuff, is asking why about your character. What, you pick a personality trait or several of them. Well, what over the course of their life has kind of developed them to be that way? Why do they like certain things? Why do they not like certain things? What's their moral code? What informed that moral code? That sort of thing. There's a lot of questions you ask yourself, and you start to build out your character based off those questions, I think. At least for me.
Yeah. I always think it's interesting, like, to also create like some conflict or like some flaws in the backstory, because that's kind of the stuff that will come forward that makes it more memorable. I mean, you totally could have an adventurer who, who still has both their parents and they're fine. They live in some, they live in, some town. That's totally cool. But, there's nothing wrong with that at all. I'm just, making fun of some of the tropes. But if you want your backstory to have any sort of like meaning in the campaign, like give it like some points of contention, give it a little bit of conflict or something that may be unresolved that could potentially come up. Those are always interesting.
Not every backstory needs to have a dark, tragic past. Like,
yeah,
I guess both my characters, campaign 1 and 2, have a sad or dark
that is true
history. Like Ron in campaign 1, his whole town was obliterated by this monster, and he was like left for dead until Bryn came and found Ron and nursed him back to health, and he decided that he wanted to help people afterwards, and take a page out of Bryn's book of wanting to do good and adventuring and all that stuff, because honestly there was nothing else for Ron. His whole village is gone, his family's gone. It's just like he just had to keep moving forward. And I think being a paladin specifically, because paladins already have like a code of conduct, they have an oath they have to uphold, so it kind of makes it easier to. And then we're getting into like role playing a little bit, but like kind of like guidelines on how to play Ron as a character, because being a paladin, there's like stuff's already there for you to build off of.
And why is Azric sad?
yeah, for sure. And it's also important to make sure that your backstory aligns with the campaign setting as well, which kind of goes back to the age-old thing we say almost every episode, is talk to your DM. Because yeah, if you think that your character's name is Joe, like robot killer, and that's their goal, is they hunt robots, if your DM's like, there's no robots in my game, like like, I mean, sorry. So you got to discuss with what's in the game and what's not, right? Or are the is this a classic fantasy setting, or some things kind of put on their head, based on the lore that's out there for existing D&D stuff. So
I will say that'd be funny if it was just a sort of weird trait that they have, where anything hostile they automatically see as a robot.
yeah. Yeah,
or
for sure.
well, I guess in D&D worlds as automatons. You know, there's
Or
constructs,
forged.
golems. Yes, you could definitely totally be a robot killer in D&D.
I mean, yeah, Joe Robot Killer is a valid, has a valid backstory as long as there are constructs or warforged or, if you want to go, what is it? I'm gonna get
the Spelljammer campaign.
Yeah, I'm gonna get these two confused. I don't remember which one's World of Warcraft and which one's D&D. Is it Autognome is the D&D?
Modrons. Yeah.
Yeah, Modrons for sure.
Autognome?
Yeah, Autognome is one of the races they added for Spelljammer. I'm pretty sure they're constructs as well.
Well, you can I think I'm making a backstory right now about Joe the Robot Killer. Is Joe was having a beer at a tavern, and a warforged came and bumped his table and spilled all his beer over his beard, and he dropped his favorite marble and it broke, and now he hates robots for all time.
Yeah, there you go. I like the idea of tying it somehow to like Modrons, getting into some of like the multiplanar stuff, and then any construct that Joe Robot Killer happens to see is either a Modron or they're working with the Modrons. Add a little paranoia.
Not familiar with Modrons.
Well, quick side, Modrons are basically they're monsters in D&D, and they live on their own plane.
Awful plane.
Yeah, they're extremely lawful, and they have a weird structural society where their sizes are like, I don't know how to describe this. So there's like a monodrone, which is lower than a duodrone, which is lower than a tridrone. Like they're like have these like numbers in front of them of the hierarchy.
And Mechanist, good old Mechanist.
Yes, thank you. I couldn't think of that.
I did a lot of planar D&D in my time.
You all saw a Modron in campaign 1 briefly.
Did because of Vin's wild table surge.
Oh, the little thing.
Yeah, the little floaty thing that just stayed with us for, was it 10 minutes and then just blipped out?
Yeah. Yep.
Huh. Didn't know that.
Yeah, it happened twice. Yeah.
That second time, I believe, was a flump.
Flump. That's what I thought it was.
That floaty tentacle thing.
Yeah. So
one thing I haven't really done until playing with you, Max, and I think Joe or Bun is a reason for this, is like those hot topic questions we do, like what is your character, what's their favorite meal, and I've never really thought of a character backstory like that before, of like, yeah, what are they interested in, what's their favorite food, what do they hate, or what do they like Valkan or VS, you made Valkan had fear of undead, and I was like, whoa. I was like, that never came across to me before, is including those type of things to help develop your character in a deeper sense.
And for reference, what we're talking about is in the beginning of the first campaign and a little bit of this campaign, to kind of help us get in like the role playing like mindset before we went on camera. Bun would have like a list of like 50 questions or so, and she would do one every single time, and it would just be like a benign like question, like what's their favorite food, or they had one that's like, what do you think happens like when you die, like where are you gonna go when you die, just like anything, and then each person would answer as their character in character to kind of help with like a little like improv RP stuff. But like you said, those can definitely be used to like think of like things about your character, like even that kind of stuff of some benign question can spark information in your mind about creating something that relates to the backstory.
Yeah. And a lot of stuff like that can come out as you play too. Like a lot of things I'm trying to remember from the first campaign. There were a few things that like I kind of just came up on the spot with, in terms of something Valken would say or a reason for something. Like you don't have to have everything bullet pointed out
No.
when you make a character. In fact, it makes it, you don't want to hand your DM like 3 pages of backstory.
Yeah.
You can have wiggle room to build your character out, because you gotta have character development, right? So
Yes.
I think
all the backstory's great. You don't need 5 pages of bullet points on it, like minute character quirks and things.
For the record,
Unless you want to.
VS writes the longest backstories of anyone. No, I love it. It's not bad. I don't like dislike it. I love it. Just want everyone to get the record straight.
I like making sure my characters firmly planted in the world that we're going to be playing in, and
they are absolutely
motivations and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've done characters that have 0 backstory, depending on like if it's a one shot or a short lived campaign. Like, yeah, the backstory is not important because we're not gonna get into the weeds of your character and your character having an impact on the world and the story. So there's a bunch of times, yeah, I just like, yeah, I'm just a dude and I like to smash things. Or I guess in another campaign I'm in right now, I'm playing technically it's a Goliath, but it's a half giant, and he's a barbarian, and his whole thing is about getting oiled up, being swole, and living the beefy way. So he's just, and what that means to him is like our group's called the Beefy Boys because we have a bunch of swole super dudes. We're like, you know that meme where like that kid's on the computer and then there's like super roided out dudes like sending very positive, supportive
yeah
messages like that.
Yeah.
That is the Beefy Boys. You know, we're out to have a good time, encourage people, live a good life, and show people the beefy way. You know, so
just a party of himbos.
yeah, basically.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah,
that sounds really fun, actually.
I think
it's what you said is important though, VS, of like balancing how much detail you provide. And like what Zeus is saying in chat is ask your DM how many pages they would like for your backstory, because you got to leave some room for growth and like things to happen, but you also don't want to turn in 10 pages of stuff probably more often than not.
And leave room for the DM to like take what you've said about your character and then throw something at you later on that you're not going to expect.
Speaking from experience.
I think this campaign is Mac and I joined forces to write our backstories together. I know in campaign 1, she told you, Max, she's like, I'm not good at backstories, do whatever. And then you made this super insane story for Vin. And then this time around, since Mac and I are part of the same crew, so we work together to work on a backstory. And it was mostly me like, hey, what do you think of this? And she's like, cool. And I was like, all right, what if we do this instead? She's like, that's also cool. And then I talked to Max about our possible venues of having, here's what I'm thinking for backstory A. Here's what I'm thinking for backstory B. And then Max was like, why don't you just put them together? And I was like, oh shit, yeah, we can put it together.
Why not both?
Yeah.
Straight up. Yeah. And I think I like that if some players want to work together on a backstory, because it immediately creates cohesion with the characters that you don't have to establish, which is always the hard part of like everyone meets in a tavern, you know, and you're adventuring together, which this campaign you kind of didn't have a choice, but that's beside the point if you to watch that.
I'm kind of feeling that this campaign early on, like your characters knew each other and everybody else didn't, but from like the start, Emmy and Cooter hit it off. So it was almost like their characters knew each other. And Valken's just like there. he's feeling things out, and still he's, you know, we've built up some party cohesion, but he still doesn't feel like maybe, I don't know, too connected to anybody. But that's also, there's reasons for that, but I won't get into. So
I think that every character in this campaign has a little bit of mystery to them, for sure. Everybody's got secrets.
I think, yeah, you say that like everyone's in a bar. Like when we started, so it was more like an escape, and then
yeah,
basically everyone got like if Azric and Taj were they pretty much were Katamari and just rolled, and everyone just got caught up in their storm.
Yep. Yeah, it was like everyone got caught up in your whirlwind.
Now we're stuck together.
I like that. It pretty much was like that. Cooter and Emmy definitely got rolled into it, and then Valken's like, "Ooh, that's an interesting rolling thing. I'm gonna jump in it."
You mean Hayden?
Hayden.
Yeah. Oh, Hayden. Sorry, we're talking on.
I got Valken's dead. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I mean, he's an elf.
He's an elf.
Yeah.
Old man Valken just probably chilling.
Not even
ice. He's eating ice cream with his feet in the water.
Did we establish how many years forward campaign 2 is? There's a
60, right?
Secret,
something like that.
60 years. Oh yeah, Valken. He's good.
Yeah. I think we had some questions too that we can roll up before we get into like some straight up new people tips. I think I know that Village asked one that I don't want to miss. Do you find any of the backgrounds hard to work with for character backstory weaving? I'll go first if y'all don't mind.
Go for it.
I don't use the backgrounds. I make a custom one every time. So I have no idea because it's in the player handbook and you're allowed to do it. So I just grab pieces from all the different things and then make it up as I go. Because a lot of them are like super setting specific.
Yeah, I basically ignore them. I just like, this is the skills I want. These are the tools I need. And if the DM happens to, or even I remember the background power or whatever it is, I always forget, and I also don't care about like the special power. But I guess it came into play last session for Emmy, so it kind of worked out.
Just waiting to use that one.
Azric has the pirate background, and the power is I can get away with misdemeanors basically. Like I forgot to pay the tavern tab, and I can do that with my backstory. But I was like, what? I was like, I'm just really using it because it's like I said, pirate, and it gave me skills I need.
Yeah, I didn't know about the custom background in the first campaign, so for Valken, I just picked mercenary veteran because he had been doing mercenary stuff. So I was like, okay, that kind of matches, and the skills are fine, I guess. But this time around, I went custom because I was like, Max, none of this stuff fits really for what I want. He's like, oh, just make it custom. I'm like, I could do that?
Yeah.
I wish I went custom for this time around. It's just like some things I would like. Oh, I mean, I'm fine with the way it is now, but yeah, there were some things I would probably want to change around.
I definitely pulled from the sailor one. It's virtually the same as the pirate one, except you don't get the not paying your bill
prime
part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the common backgrounds that are like in like the source books are pretty easily adaptable, right? But there's quite a bit of them that are very much setting specific. Like if you're looking at like Curse of Strahd stuff, well, yeah, unless you're playing like a horror campaign, it's not. You kind of have to switch some stuff around to make it work. Or like any of like the Strixhaven or like Ravnica stuff. Like like if they're setting specific, you're gonna have to work with your DM. One, make sure you can use them, and then two, like change some things around. But I think at that point, just make a custom one. It's very clearly laid out on how to do it in the player's handbook before it even lists the other backgrounds, I'm pretty sure. So just do it.
I
It'd be interesting to see going forward, because I know they've been talking about like making backstories have more of a gameplay impact.
I hope
Like
so.
Talking about, giving some backstories like feats tied to them and whatnot, but not like the normal feats. It'll be like very specific feats for that background, and then building on that as you level up. So it'll be interesting to see how backgrounds change and see if they become, a little bit more.
I think they play into stats as well, not just skills and feat, but you also get stat points for depending on what background you pick. So should be interesting. It's kind of gamifying it a little bit more, but I don't know.
I like it. I very much like it because it goes to and we're getting a little off the rails here, but it goes to the arguments of a lot of people, not liking inherent like stats coming from like your chosen like race in D&D, which I agree with. Put it on their background. that informs you what kind of person and how they probably grew up in a lot of cases. So I'm fine with that. Pretty sure Pathfinder does that too. A lot of their stuff is tied into their backgrounds.
I think it makes more sense to tie that stuff to the background rather than a race, because you don't want to say like, I get that it's a fantasy setting, but like it's kind of weird saying some races inherently do these things better than other races. Like,
yeah,
if we're talking about like Dark Vision or something, it's like, oh, fine. But like, why do, I don't know, half elves have to be +2 to charisma or whatever? Or why does that matter?
They sexy as fuck. That's why. No.
Yeah, I guess.
As soon as those optional rules came out, I've just always used them. And and if you don't like it, then who gives a shit? I don't care. Take the optional rule and pick the stat you want, or don't play your own game. I don't care.
Yeah, because why can't I play a smart wizard orc? Why does my orc have to have +2 strength minus X intelligence? Well, back in the day, every race had pluses and minuses. Like in 3.5, orcs had +2 strength, -1, -2 con, or no, intelligence, something like that. I don't remember. It's been too long, but
I don't exactly remember what they're doing with backgrounds either. So I don't know. I don't even remember at this point, based on how many playtests they've had of what's actually going to go into backgrounds. So take that with a grain of salt, unless I go research it, which I'm not going to do right now. What about advice for new players? It's your first player, your first character, and you got to make a backstory. Your DM wants a backstory. What's some little tips you can give someone?
I can go first. Decide for yourself. First off, make sure you know what kind of campaign it's going to be. The setting, is it going to be a long campaign? Is it only going to be a single episode, like single shot thing? Get that ironed out first. Then from there, decide for yourself, what do you think you're going to have fun with? Pick your class, your race, in whatever order you want to, and ask yourself questions. Build out your character by asking yourself, what's the motivations? Where are they from? Did they go to school? Just start asking yourself questions. The same type of questions you would have asked somebody when you really want to get to know them. Like, start that way, and you'll start building things out. Or pull some tropes or ideas from something and build off that.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, you reminded me, VS, about asking yourself questions. I actually have I went to like a panel and they brought up some questions. But before I get into those, I think like if you're first time playing D&D and you're making your first character, but you are also a gamer, like you like to play video games, like particularly RPGs, try to make a character that you like. Like, for example, if you played World of Warcraft, do you like playing priest? Do you like playing warrior, shaman, like those types of things? And then just try to emulate that, what your character was in your video games, and make that your first character for D&D. But
everyone knows that your first D&D character is just yourself.
Pretty much. But yeah, ask yourself these questions. What do you believe in that most people disagree with? That's like some super deep stuff.
Yeah.
Mm.
Uh, and then you can ask yourself, what is it like to have a conversation with yourself? So how do people perceive your character in the world? What are some of the things that your innermost circle would say about you as your character? How do you want to be remembered? What lessons have you learned from your failures? And what are the passions that drive you? There's a little bit deeper questions, but it would
Mhm.
really those questions really expand on who you want your character to be in the particular world or setting they're in.
I think for me, one thing that I would push towards a new player towards is there's already a system of building a background being different than backstory, right? Start with the background, look at making your own, look at all the choices that are already in there, that are going to include like the features. They're going to include a little bit of information, like, let's take Acolyte, for example, like spending your life in the service of a temple, right? Look through all the options, look through them, see what interests you and what you would like to play, and then kind of go from there, because they give you a lot of options for personality traits, for ideals, bonds, and flaws, and you can pick and choose from whichever ones you want. Find some stuff that interests you on this stuff that's already made to help you, and then build your backstory around that. So if I look at, like, Acolyte, and they have the Shelter of the Faithful feature. You command respect those who share the faith with you. You spent your life in service of a temple. Look at some personality traits. Nothing can shake my optimistic attitude. Well, what happened to that in that person's life that would make them optimistic about everything, right? You know, has it been like a way for them to cope through tragedy, or has like nothing ever bad ever happened to this person, right? Something that you can just extract from these like little tables that you roll dice on. Um, very, very easily. Let's look at one of the flaws here. Um, let's see here. Suspicious of strangers and expect the worst of them. What would drive that character to be so suspicious of people that they didn't know? Use the tools that are in the handbook and help build upon that. So that way you already have a foundation and you're not trying to build everything from the ground up, especially as a new player. And then as you play more D&D, then yeah, go wild, make a wild backstory, but kind of get your feet underneath you, use the tools that are there, and then build on them is what I would advise.
All good stuff. Village has a question. I have a question perfect for these CNC people. How do you work with other players to reveal backstories in a good pace over time? I think it's, from my experience, it's more of, as we play the game, things just kind of fall into place unless we're actively prodding people, which we didn't tend to do much of in the first campaign. It might be more of a thing this campaign, depending on what happens.
Could be.
But most of the stuff just comes out. A lot of it is on, Max as a DM,
Mhm.
kind of throwing things in our path from somebody's backstory that we stumble upon. So I guess, I don't know. Anybody else have any input on that one?
Yeah, I feel like it's pretty organic as they come up, and especially like Max being such a great DM, kind of have these moments kind of pop up where just the backstories kind of unveil. I think yeah, we are actively trying harder doing like our campfire chats when we're on watch, trying to prod more.
Mhm.
But for some reason, we all made very secretive characters this campaign, so it's like super hard to divulge information. Like we're always constantly asking Cooter, why is she so like crazy about research and what is she researching? And she's not unveiling any of that information. So it's like it's been and then Taj and Azric have a pretty shady back history, so they don't really want to divulge any of that information either. And who knows what Hayden's doing? My goodness, that guy, he's a closed book.
I think
he's just a guy.
To answer your question, Village, of like, it depends on like the backstory. If there's like secret stuff, then I'll work with that player of like, hey, like letting them know things are going to start coming up, prepare for this stuff depending on how the campaign's going, right? If it's like super secret, like reveal type stuff, then that's what I would do. Otherwise, it's really up to, you know, the player, and they might run across things that happen in the campaign. But one thing that I would kind of caution everyone, including both of you on the call too, since I'm just going to hand all this wisdom out, is you've got to create some sort of mechanisms for your character to release information, right? There's got to be something in place of what's in your mind. How will this information get out, right? Because from another player's perspective, and I've had this happen in a campaign that I was in as a player, is the players might try 1 or 2 times, but if nothing comes out, then there's really not an incentive for them to keep asking, right? You kind of have to talk as a group of like, okay, what's the threshold of which I'm going to start letting some stuff, you know, come out? Because as a DM, if there's some stuff that I just can't force, right? It wouldn't make sense in the world that if it's knowledge that your player only knows, if you want other people to know it, it's kind of on you to figure out how you want people to know it, right? Because back to the adage of like, you don't know what you don't know, you know. So if I have no idea what's going on with Moobs' character backstory, like I might not know the questions to ask. I might not know, like, maybe if I ask him 3 times and he'll tell me, like, I don't know that. It's something you gotta kind of have to talk through as a group, because it's really hard to do organically unless the people are kind of in on it a little bit. They don't have to know everything, but they have to know, hey, like, keep asking, you know, that kind of stuff. I've had to do some of that as well. Otherwise, your secret will never come up in the whole campaign.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. As a player, I like to look at it from a window of what my character knows for almost everything. So I will only write down notes about the other party members if they've revealed something, because I know there's certain things that come up between DM and that player in the game that my character, unless they were in that conversation or overheard something, it's like meta knowledge that my character doesn't have. So I will not write notes about it. So, and I try as a player to play it as my character wasn't present for that. So, you know, I think I feel like most people in our game does that too. So maybe that's why there's still so much mystery right now between the characters, because not much has been revealed by any of the characters themselves. So, well, we've had like Moobs' dream celestial encounter that his character went through that nobody else really saw at all.
Yeah.
And so we've been getting backstory stuff a little bit, but our characters don't know that. So
And honestly, there was a little bit of this kind of touched on in the last Out of Combat. If you want to watch some of that, a little bit of discussion around that. I think like a sort of condensed version, so that doesn't get necessarily spoiled, is I think they asked me a question about like, you know, some lore or like someone's backstory or like something like that. And I was just like, hey, like, think about it in your world. You're kind of this ragtag group of 5 people that were thrust together. To be honest, because of Azric and Taj being fugitives, like, I'm sort of waiting for some of this to like come to a head, right? If you're a person, I mean, think about, you know, Emmy and Hayden and Cooter, like, they're criminals because of you. You know?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. I thought it was brought up a little when we went to that's when we first met Karzak and Kurzak and the crew. A little bit of that came up, and then I think we all just completely forgot.
Yeah.
After the word.
Y'all been kind of running and gunning since then too, but I think that now where you're at, like, in, I don't want to say a comfortable situation, but you've kind of left a foothold in the world. You've kind of picked a direction. Like, I think that leaves some space to be like, okay, you know, what the fuck? But that's on y'all. That's not on me.
It's I think it's a tough thing because um I if things don't get resolved in game character, like there's people possibly leaving that character leaving the game. You know, I don't know how it'll play out, how we resolve because the crew has very different motivations, but we're stuck together. So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting how it plays out.
I want to say too, and not that this is going to happen to anyone listening, we're getting a little deep here on Tome Knowledge, but if for some reason your character no longer has the motivation to adventure with that group and you think that it's not going to work out, fine, make them leave, make a new character. If that's what you want to do, you can, that's something that you can do. Like if in that case, you know, let's say your character has like completed their goal. Like your character set out a goal to complete for the campaign. If you don't think that they would keep going, or if something happened in their life where they even want to keep going, retire them, make something new. You don't have to force a square peg into a round hole if you don't want to. But this is kind of,
I've seen the video.
What?
You ever seen that video?
Yes.
Yeah, it's so good. Like it was a QA or a game person, dev person, and they're like, this is how QA works. And the designer, it's like a little kid's toy, right? And you put the shape blocks into the correct shape. And so the designer is watching someone do this, but they're like, oh, the square goes into the square hole. And she's like, yes. And then she's like, the triangle goes into, and she's like, yes, the square hole. And she's like, wait, no. Like, yeah.
I think I've seen that video now.
Yeah. It's so funny. But anyway, I think like some other good tips for someone new, obviously talk to the DM. Make sure it connects with the world. Let them guide you. Tell them your ideas and help them, you know, help you shape it. You know, and embrace flaws in your character and in their background, because those are the things that make the story interesting. Like, especially in D&D, like, yeah, if you do things right all the time and you never fail, like that's a pretty boring story. Like, you have to have some conflicts and some adversity to overcome. And I think introducing a little bit in your backstory kind of helps that along.
Yeah, it's boring if you're just, I mean, you could be a goody two shoes who has zero flaws and they're perfect every way. I think, yeah, flaws really make things more interesting and get people maybe more invested in your character because of those flaws.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Nobody's really perfect, even in a fantasy setting. I'm sure a DM could find a way to isolate that character and give them a decision that might test that.
Yeah, I think that's one thing D&D doesn't do well, is encouraging flaws. Like other game systems where like you pick what was it? It's hubris and virtues, and then virtues you cost more points and you get a benefit. But if you pick a hubris, you get a negative effect, but you get more points to add to X thing. Like I think Shadowrun does this really well, where you pick hubrises and but they benefit your character creation process, where you can spend points X like on more stats, more skills, or whatever. That's one thing I think D&D is really lacking on.
I'm sure Burning Wheel does that too. Right there on the shelf, it's blurred, but Burning Wheel has some of that as well.
Yeah, as it stands, a lot of it falls to a DM to award players who play into flaws, like Max does. Like Max will award inspiration if your character acts in a manner that is laid out in their background.
Yeah,
like Valken being afraid of undead, or anything.
I think that was the first time that you really set the tone in campaign 1 of like, oh, this is how this works, because the idea is embracing one of your character's like personality traits or flaws, which directly hinders the party, in combat or otherwise. Like, and your example was perfect. Like the first time that your character encountered undead in campaign 1, you're like, I spend my turn cowering in fear. It's like you waste an entire turn. I'm gonna cower because I don't like this, and it was cool to see kind of the progression throughout the campaign there. So
I think it's never too late to add a flaw. Like I'm thinking about adding a new flaw for
Sure.
to Azaric. I've had it in my mind, but I just never played it out. And then when I had the moment, I didn't do it. So I think moving forward, I'm gonna introduce that flaw for Azaric.
Yeah, we talk about character development. Like maybe not every bit of character development is necessarily positive. Depending on what happens in the campaign, your character could develop some weird flaw that, as a result of what they've done in their adventure so far, or something they've had to encounter. So yeah, this, like I said, that's why you don't need a 5 pages of concrete information on your character's backstory, because you leave a little bit open, and your character could change and grow and morph into something else as you go along.
Yeah, I mean, we're still learning our characters. We're like 12, 13 sessions in, and we're still feeling out our characters, how we want to role play our characters, like, and how we want to play them. So it's like in real life, people grow, so your characters can grow too, or also gain flaws.
That is a good point. I didn't think about that. Adding stuff mid, yeah, that makes total sense.
I think it needs to be maybe said a little bit. We're talking about flaws, and like we use the example of cowering in fear for a turn or two in a encounter with undead, but like you don't. It's flaws are fun. Don't want to take things too far to the point where you're constantly hindering your party, because
Yeah.
it can become an issue. Just a lot of this stuff is a feeling out process, but hopefully you know your group well enough, and it's a team effort.
Yeah,
So
that is very much important. Is that at its core, I truly believe that D&D is a collaborative storytelling game. So whatever you choose, it's got to make sense with the people that you're running with and with the campaign as well. Because if it's not, I'm not gonna have a good time.
yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, I agree
Any
with
other
that.
little tidbits that of knowledge or ideas to leave the audience?
Yeah, I will say as well as Zeus that as you as a DM or as a DM play like a devil's deal for a player. If you lean into your flaw, I'll grant you inspiration. I think those are always kind of fun things as well. Or hey, I want to do this really cool thing, that technically isn't allowed. Okay, cool. What level of spell slot you want to use to do that, or something like that? Stuff like that. That's fun.
Mm-hmm.
But
It's tough. It's tough because when you get into those scenarios where you want to cast your spells, you want to do your cool 3-hit attacks on a turn, and it feels good to always be pushing for a win. But sometimes it's also fun to have your character do something funny or weird.
yeah, and it's okay to lose. It's up to the DM to make the
Yeah.
story interesting if you lose. So
Mm-hmm. That's
so
right. Team effort,
And
team effort, team effort.
yeah,
anyone have go ahead.
this is just a tangent, but I'm curious if we failed that bar fight, what the outcome would have been.
Who knows? Yeah, so the reason why I say that, if anyone who hasn't had a chance to experience like how I DM, I typically don't entertain the kind of the what if questions, right? And that's kind of my personal choice. of like, what if we didn't fail that bar fight, or like, what if I could persuade this person? And the reason why I don't sort of entertain those questions are because I don't want the players to have a sense that, you know, we got it wrong or we got the bad ending or something like that, right? What happens happens, and you all can certainly, you know, theorize what could have happened if things were differently. But if I tell you something that would have happened differently, then it becomes law because I said it and it's my campaign setting. So I don't want that out in the world of this would have happened if this didn't happen thing. So I don't typically entertain that.
Yeah, as a DM, you don't want to lose potential threads for later on.
Exactly. Right? And there's also stuff in my back pocket that I'll just put right back in there and save for later. So
I think it goes back to the point where like it's a collaborative story. There's no right or wrong. We're all working together to tell this story for everyone to enjoy. So there's no right or wrong way to go about things. Oh, thanks, Chucky.
Hi, Trekkie. How are you?
I'm gonna check right now.
Librarians. How cool is that? I don't know if Nicole's here, but if Nicole's here, meet Lauren. Lauren, meet Nicole.
Wow. I think it's because 2 librarians can't be in the same place at the same time.
There can only be one.
Is it a Highlander situation?
Yeah. Yeah. I hope everybody learned a little bit about character creation or got some insight about our characters from either our first campaign or second campaign. Of course, if you have any more questions or you want to talk about your backstory character process, you know, leave in the comments, join the Discord, do all things, tweet at us. You know, we love to hear from everybody.
And clearly we like talking about D&D, so give us more of an opportunity to talk about D&D.
Yeah. Those links should be fixed now. By the way, it's one of those things where Twitter like truncated them and then the link stopped. That's okay. The pin post has them correct. So yeah, they're all there. They all work now. Thank you for letting us know. That was an easy fix. Any last words before we wrap this up?
No. Anytime you're about to roll for seduce, make sure you fluff your muscles.
Oh, God. You have to have something better than that, VS. We can't end on that note.
That's moves, man. Not me.
I know. No, I'm saying save us, VS, please.
Oh, save us. Okay.
If you want to learn more about that, you should check out our Friday live streams, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, on the same channel here.
And this Friday is going to be very interesting because we left on an interesting cliffhanger last week.
And we get Captain E-Rock for one more week, so that's always a win.
Yeah, special guest Captain E-Rock and his character Gromkey, who's been
only
a delight.
Gromkey in there.
So yeah, with that being said, thanks for watching. Hopefully you learned something or got a little bit of insight of how we ourselves create character backstories. If you have any questions, feel free to drop into our Discord. Links are there in the chat or the description, or you can always tweet at us. So if you have something that you want answered or something that's maybe troubling you in the D&D space and want us to kind of work through it, please feel free, give us some ideas. We have a channel in Discord, or however you want to get at us, we can. Choose your favorite social media. So with that being said, thanks everybody for watching. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. is a Bun Bun art stream. Thursday is when our Out of Combat drops for the episode last week. And then Friday, 6 p.m. come join us right here. And we'll have the next episode of D&D. So have a good evening, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for all the follows.